Welcome to another podcast from Behind the Music. Your peek into the lives of musicians who make the music that matters.
When I was younger, a girl I was interested in was a huge fan of Peter Allen. In fact, she introduced me to his music. His song I Go to Rio had just broken in Australia, and he was becoming a star here. Peter was already huge overseas, having written I Love You, I Honestly Love You for Olivia Newton-John, and various songs for Helen Reddy. So I rang my friend at a uni and strangely got through to her and suggested she miss lectures that afternoon because I had something special in mind. I wanted it to be a surprise, but she wasn't coming unless I told her what was happening, as she'd missed too many classes in the previous weeks. So I told her we were going to meet Peter Allen in a couple of hours and see him later that night at the Sydney Opera House. She screamed. Well, I picked her up outside the uni and drove her to the Boulevard Hotel in William Street, Sydney. A few minutes later, we were sitting down with Peter Allen in his hotel room, recording the interview you'll hear interspersed throughout today's program. I asked Peter how it all began for him.
Started off playing in pubs when I left high school. I took a job for a while, but then I decided it was more fun to play in pubs and more money. It was very easy in Australia. You had to literally work everywhere at that point because the business was not very large, so to get enough work to survive in Australia at that point, you really had to please everyone. You had to play the RSLs, you had to do television, you had to do pantomimes, and I don't think that's still around today. So I literally worked every place that there was to work in Australia before I was 18.
Going to America was something Peter always dreamed about, and it opened up for him in a big way.
Well, in the States, I opened for Judy Garland for 2 years, which was always interesting, and but sometimes not so easy. Her audiences were very, very fanatical for her, so even to survive going out there before her, they were so crazy for her to come on. You had to really work very hard to get any reaction out of the audience. You need, first of all, a lot of energy to keep them interested. I think you have to communicate with them. You have to treat each audience a little differently, find out what they want. I can just tell what they're reacting to and what they're not reacting to. I mean, if they don't laugh at certain things, I know that they're not that, and you can tell if you get a lot of applause after a ballad that they're going to like the quieter things, or if they don't seem to be paying too much attention to the ballads, you move into a fast number. It's just like that. I know what to dwell on and what not to dwell on. Well, I watched her a lot, and I saw what she did with audiences, and she always sussed the audience out very clearly what they wanted, and she could play with them. And when I'm in an audience, I like to feel that the performer is really paying attention and trying to get me interested and keep me interested. So I always think of myself as part of the audience whenever I go out.
BehindTheMusic.com.au.
Quiet Please, There's a Lady on Stage. It's a song from his album Taught by Experts. I asked him whether there were other experts that he'd met that had had an impact on his stagecraft and performance.
Yes, when I was very young, about 17, I worked at Checkers nightclub, which was then going. As the opening act for Faye, and she played the piano and sang and spoke to the audience, and she had a wonderful rapport with the audience, so I observed her very clearly, and she told me a lot of things about being real, finding a way of singing the song each night so that you can sing the song and you will actually believe what you're singing, so that the audience will too.
When I spoke with Peter, I asked him about a song that doesn't find its way to many compilations of his hits today. It's called Planes.
I found that I was writing a lot of songs on planes because when you're on a plane, there's no phones, and you're usually going somewhere or leaving something or some place or someone, and there's always a feeling of either expectancy about where you're going, and so you're in an emotional state all the time you're on planes. So I find, you have a drink on a plane and all of a sudden you start to think a lot. So I used to write a lot of songs on planes, and then one time I was on a plane and I couldn't think of anything to write about, so I wrote about being on the plane.
BehindTheMusic.com.au.
Over the years, Peter has written some incredible songs. I Love You, I Honestly Love You, Don't Cry Out Loud, Everything Old Is New Again, and I Still Call Australia Home. But I asked him whether writing songs was difficult.
It's hard for me to write songs. It's not easy for me. I rely a lot on inspiration. In fact, I can sit around for weeks and weeks waiting for inspiration. Whereas I should be doing a little more slogging away at it at the piano. There's two ways to write a song. Either you sit and wait for inspiration or sit down and slog at it. I think the best way is to slog at it, but unfortunately the best songs seem to be the inspirational ones. They just don't come along very often. You can take any disappointments or down periods in your life, and instead of just sitting there getting depressed about them, you can sit down and write songs, and that's kind of a catharsis, and it gets out, it gets rid of them, and when you're finished, you have a song. So it's a great way of dealing with problems.
Well, one of the most important songs of Peter's career was I Go to Rio. It was one of the biggest sleeper hits of the 70s. Radio ignored it when it was first released in 1976, but a year later it became a major hit when it was re-released and accompanied by a vibrant promotional video clip. It was just Peter wearing a loud Hawaiian shirt, playing his piano, singing and dancing around the studio with a pair of maracas. Countdown got hold of it and the song went to number 1. And all the kids around the country just wanted to take their shirts off.
Yeah, that seems to be the reason that Australians like it, that I take my clothes off and I don't know why. In fact, before I came to Australia, I thought, gee, I might have to modify the act a little bit, because it's not New York and all that. But then, as soon as I got here, I found that's the part they like the best. The first question the little kids ask me, you're going to take off your clothes. It's hard to top Rio. I use the fast numbers to get everyone up and relaxed and happy, and then I find that when they're like that, you can then turn around and sing them some ballads or something that they may not be familiar with, and they'll be very receptive to it.
The Behind the Music team hopes you enjoyed this podcast. Behind the Music is your ticket backstage into the real lives of music's hottest acts from yesterday and today. Share your memories and thoughts on the music and interviews you hear on Behind the Music on our easy-to-find Facebook page. Look for Behind the Music or follow the links at our website.